Kaimere is a distant planet. It is defined by waves of life brought from Earth and set free to evolve independently in this new context. The indigenous life of the planet, swarms of microbes called magic by the people who live there, are what harvest Earth organisms and make copies on Kaimere. As the asteroid which concluded the Mesozoic never struck Kaimere, dinosaurs remain the dominant terrestrial megafauna. The harvest from Miocene South America, prompted by the mass extinction of Nikari flora and fauna due to a massive phosphorus runoff, was among the most significant in Kaimere's history. Its conclusion ushered in the Anchored Period, a nearly 5 million year span of ecological stability and prosperity. The sloths were the breakout stars of this harvest, as discussed at the end of November, with around a dozen genera harvested and over 50 descended species scattered throughout the known world and beyond. Terror birds remain firmly established as the vassal predators throughout the lands of the known world, and armadillos and anteaters have high populations of numerous species as well. The mammal predators of this harvest did not have much success, and the last died out at the end of the Anchored Period, when the tilt of the planetary axis sent the southern hemisphere of Kaimere into a cool and dry period. When South American ungulates and large herbivores were largely outcompeted at the end of the Anchored Period, as many forests were overtaken by grassland, and new predators and prey were better adapted to these open spaces, a few species survived the cold years and had tremendous success once Kaimere righted itself and warmed once more. Over these 3 weeks, we will meet a few of these survivors. In the forest and wetlands of Nikar, there were once several rhinoceros species. The extinction which set off the Anchored Period hit this clade especially hard, and a counterpart from South America took their place, mostly outcompeting any rhinos in Nikar that survived. These were the Toxodonts. Toxodonts belong to the noto-ungulates, a group of hoofed animals that, alongside litopterns we will discuss next week, comprise a sister clade to odd-toed ungulates, such as horses, rhinos, and tapirs of today. Their diet was extremely flexible, able to eat just about any plant matter. They are among the few mammals that subsist on large quantities of horsetails, ferns, and cycads, common in the Titan Gardens of Kaimere, although they prefer angiosperm leaves and grass. Though they could specialize, a varied diet seems to have been important, promoting a degree of migration. Despite a ponderous appearance, Toxodonts were surprisingly swift, capable of making agile turns to evade or turn on attackers. Though not particularly combative, they could employ tusks and strong jaws in self-defense. Additionally, they secreted a substance which minimized their ultraviolet signature, an invaluable defense both back on Earth when hunted by terror birds and in Kaimere when also hunted by large theropods. All this added up to tremendous success, and Toxodon in particular thrived, with many species evolving as they spread across both continents of the known world. When the planet became cool and arid 1.5 million years ago, Toxodonts were hit especially hard. Their dietary flexibility enabled them to outlive a lot of other large noto-ungulates, but they were much more successful in warmer climates, and most in Arvel went extinct. Although many Nikari species survived the climate change, when housey grass replaced the diverse prairies almost 500,000 years ago, the prairie specialists went extinct amidst the new competition and restricted diet. Today, there are 3 species of Toxodon known to the assembly: the garden Toxodon, the crescent Toxodon, and the Arvelith Toxodon. The garden Toxodon evolved in Nikar and spread south into Arvel once the climate warmed 1.5 million years ago. They are a very mobile species and seem to prefer wide variety in their diet, with some herds gathering on the housey prairie during the wet season for a variety of grasses, seeking out hugel dens for shoots and fresh grazing, wetlands to gorge on hyacinth and duckweed, and following titanosaurs as they shove down trees. Their mobility is such that a herd can afford to deplete a region, making them a problem for territorial and stationary species. Garden Toxodon are enormous, with bulls sometimes reaching 3 tons, while females are generally 1.5 tons. Garden Toxodon live in herds of a dozen or so related females and a single bull. These herds can mount impressive defenses, and only terror birds and megaraptor ants regularly present a threat. Like their ancestors, they are muted in the ultraviolet spectrum, making it harder for these predators to find them, especially at night when they do the most of their foraging. They must also feed during the day due to their sheer caloric demands, which is why their mortality is highest during the day. They are a very abundant species and represent a majority of the diet of most Zentaur and many firebacks. They are very skittish and violent when cornered, though they generally flee these predators. Crescent Toxodon are a much smaller species, though up to a ton in the largest bulls, still formidable. These are solitary animals with a lot more fur to keep them warm in their highland homes, though they venture downhill to forage in imperial lands. They don't have much to fear from many predators, since Zentaur are rare in the Crescent and Fireback tend not to go into the highlands, but White Crocatrus can bring down all but the largest bulls. Though many have been tamed and they have proved surprisingly intelligent and willing to live in much larger herds of their wild counterparts, they are very reluctant to breed in captivity, so even though their temperament is much more amiable to domestication than the Garden Toxodon, being difficult to breed means that they are really only kept as for meat, or as guardians of domesticated herds of other animals like sheep and camelids. Last is the Arvelith or woolly Toxodon. While most Arvelith Toxodon went extinct in the cooling period, the highland species was already well adapted to such conditions, though they suffered population loss. They faced steep competition from incoming mammoths that came before their numbers could recover, and they never fully regained that ground. Herds will descend to the Arvelith steppe to graze, though often during the summer's bounty, they tend to spend most of the year in the mountains and winter in the highland forests to the north. Though they have been poorly studied and understood due to their hard-to-reach preferred habitat, their numbers appear to be quite stable and abundant. A subspecies of woolly Toxodon, and indeed the largest noto-ungulate of Earth or Kaimere, was the Cudgerith Toxodon. Little is known of this 5-ton beast, but it is assumed to be analogous to the woolly Toxodon in all other respects. Like so many megafauna endemic to the massive and largely isolated Cudgerith Peninsula, the Cudgerith Toxodon was culled to extinction by the first children when they settled the land around 12,000 years ago. Another 3 subspecies of woolly Toxodon live in the islands of the Free States and the massive island of Calren, along with Picardia. In these places, they are smaller than their mainland cousins, yet lead similar lives, doing quite well in these habitats, lacking predators regularly capable of bringing them down. Picardian Toxodon is a larger subspecies, though may constitute their own species status, even given the separation from the woolly Toxodon as they migrated to the region 1.5 million years ago. Overall, Toxodon are not nearly as diverse as ungulates brought in the last spike of harvest coinciding with Earth's Pleistocene, but their populations are extremely abundant. They lack horns, trunks, long tusks, claws, or other distinguishing features, and their temperament is neither so aggressive that they have a formidable reputation, nor docile enough for domestication. To many Chimerans, Toxodon represent the quintessential beast, a baseline by which many other large monsters are considered. Perhaps boring to some, yet they are generally thought of highly, and there's something to be said for setting the standard. Cheers to Michael for sponsoring this episode. Already had 2 other episodes lined up for South American megafauna, so I was very excited to make this a trilogy of South American megafauna, especially after working on last week's enormous sloth episode. Next week, we will meet the Leptopterns, followed by the Bionton, Chimere's largest rodent. Thank you so much to my Patreon patrons for your support. It's how Kaimere is able to be the focus of my time and attention. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next week. Cheers, folks!